underway here. And what I'm going to talk about today is pretty much all the new functionality that we have for 2016. So we'll start with a new user interface, which is kind of the big thing for 2016 in general for SolidWorks. We saw a new interface change on the mechanical side as well as on the electrical side. We'll go through that. The ability to assign several symbols to a component at once. So again, with this new interface, we're trying to reduce the number of clicks, and along those lines is trying to do more with less clicks. Right. Functionality to zoom into a SolidWorks model from our 2D design. Rights management updates, so a little bit more control on who can access what when working inside a project. Main focus here is on the book level. So as you organize your project via books, you have more control over who can access which properties and which books. A formula manager simplification, so we got some new variables and a results preview window that we'll look at. Cabling order with nodal indication, so we'll look at a different way to view wires inside our schematic versus using the cable ordering menu. And we'll look at some filters inside of reports. Page 2, we got a lot to get through today. We'll look at a multi-page macro. So before we knew a macro, we could highlight a section of our schematic and reuse it across projects. We can now create or grab multiple pages for that macro setting and reuse them across projects. Along the same lines as that one, we also added updates to the dynamic paste special. So a little more control over what we're going to do with those components that are brought in on a macro or brought in versus paste special. Project snapshot, which I'm pretty excited about, gives us the ability to capture a project at a specific point and then roll back if necessary to that point. So if we're trying to do different revisions or we're breaking apart a project, we can set a baseline and then deviate from there. PDM link we'll talk about, the ability to run some reports when checking into PDM. Origin destination for cable inside of the 3D space. Made that interface a little bit easier to use so there's less clicking. And finally we'll wrap up with SolidWorks integration. So adding PCBs live time to our electrical models. So that will be the basis. And for this, if you have questions, I'll keep my GoToMeeting window open. So feel free to ask questions, and as I see them, I'll try to get you an answer. If I don't have the answer, I'll be sure to follow up and send you an email. All right, let's get underway here, and we'll click right through that list, and I'll show you what I'm talking about inside of SolidWorks Electrical. So we'll start with our new user interface, which now gives us some context-sensitive properties, which is going to minimize the number of pop-ups that we're used to seeing. So current process now is to right-click on an object or right-click on a component, go to the symbol or component properties, click on a tab, try to change the manufacturer, try to change some of the properties of that component. We've added a right side panel where we can quickly access all those attributes. And the idea behind this one is to just reduce the number of clicks and the motion of your mouse. Try to keep everything on one page without the pop-ups. This is also going to be a lot simpler for new users coming into the software, that they don't have to have the tribal knowledge of where to go inside of the interface. Let me hop into SolidWorks Electrical here, and we can start to look at our just our regular project. What you'll notice is I now have this right-hand pane. And inside this pane I have resources, which is going to look a lot like SolidWorks for the SolidWorks users out there. We have our resources, so some quick getting started options. As well as if I go up to my settings, I can also turn on tutorials here. So if I wanted to see any tutorials that I have for this software, we can turn that on and view them inside our side panel. There we go. So we can rearrange any of our tabs. So tutorials will walk you through creating a new project. A lot of the stuff that we cover in more depth in training, but it will give you that overall goal to get you up and running inside of the software. These tabs move just like our left side does, so our documents and component tabs. If I want my symbols, if I don't like my symbols on the right side, if I'm used to them over on the left, we can still go ahead and drag these over to the other side and place them on the left or the right. The biggest thing I'm excited to share is this Properties tab. I'm just going to rearrange so right now nothing is selected. In the past, if I wanted to see the properties of this sensor, I would have to right-click, go to Symbol Properties, and view it here. Now what I can do is just give it a simple left-click, so just by selecting it, all my symbol properties or component properties are going to be present here. So if I need to change my part number, I can do it from this menu. If I want to make it a permanent or turn off that it's a permanent component, I can do it from this menu. If I want to add a range, I can go ahead and create those changes to my component live time on the side panel, as long as that's selected. Same with assigning locations and functions. Everything about those component properties are now at our fingertips. This also works for our location settings. So if we need to change the name or the description of our location, as soon as I click it, my Properties tab is going to have that information from the location properties. Where this gets very useful is with our wiring. So if I select a wire, I can now see all my equipotential information for that wire. I can go into my wire information. So for my details that go into 3D, like my section and my bend radius, I can now control from this pop-up, and all I have to do is hit the green check to apply my changes. And the one I've been using the most since going to 2016 is having our wire style built into the Properties tab. So if I want to come in and actually change my formula for wire style, I have quick access here, whereas in 2015 I would have to go to Project, Configurations, Wire Styles, select the wire style that I'm using, go into Properties, and then click my. So a lot more clicks and a lot more pop-ups, which I can quickly get to now just by selecting my wire, having Wire Style tab open, and changing my properties here. All right. All right. Next thing we'll talk about is the ability to associate multiple symbols to a component. So again, just trying to reduce the clicks needed. I probably have more on that slide. Here we go. So trying to avoid those pop-ups to create associations. Again, less clicks to do what our job is to actually provide an electrical design. So we'll jump back into the software here. And I'm going to add a couple new symbols. I'll go into my Symbols tab, and I'll grab a protection here. So this will come in as F2. I'm not going to associate a manufacturer part yet. I'm just going to say OK. And I'll grab a sensor, which is B2. So I have these two components that do not have manufactured parts. So the first thing I can do inside of here is I can select them both, give it a right click, and go to my component, assign manufacturer parts. We weren't able to do this because I had multiple selected in 2015. Now, however, if I come into here, it'll select my first one, which is my B2 detector, and I can create an association for this molar. And what will happen is it'll leave this dialog box open for me and move on to my F2 component. Automatically puts me in the class based on my symbol. Now I can double-click, choose a Legrand part number. I'm quickly creating manufacturer parts for these. This guy here does have a manufacturer part. It's just not part of the symbol to call it out. All right. What we can also do from here is if I select, if I want to select on my Legrand and say F2 really is an association of F1. I want these two to be linked. So right now my F1 is a Legrand, remember 573 versus this 804. So if I want to associate that, before I would have to go into my symbol properties, find F1 in my tree, and associate it that way. Now instead of going into that pop-up, I could say assign. I can right-click and say assign component. And that dialog box from inside our symbol properties goes into our command prompt on the left hand. So now I can just go ahead and find F1. I can still use my search and my filters on this left-hand control. So I can go ahead and find F1, create my association, and you'll notice that my symbol is going to update to F1 and that manufacturer part. So that association does get created right from our menu. Also, that will stay open. So if I'm inside of here and I want to assign my components, and I want to assign this maybe to my pump, we'll call it B123. I can assign that. I stay inside my command. So now as I navigate across, maybe I want, let's just grab this. We'll create this and create it as K1. And go ahead and create that association and just keep associating as I work through my project. All right. Definitely going to be increased efficiency on this one because we're doing everything on our same screen. I don't have to worry about going to a pop-up or multiple pop-ups in some cases to create that association. All right, zoom to 3D. New feature added is the ability to see what our 3D component looks like inside our model. So I have SolidWorks open and I have my model here. So from electrical, I'll get out of my assigned component. I'm in my component tree. And now what we have is 3D models inside our components. So before, the only time we saw that SolidWorks symbol was if we had an assembly inside our document tree. Now we have it in our component tree, much like our SolidWorks tree. And I can right-click, and the option I have is Zoom to SolidWorks. And what that'll do is open up SolidWorks and zoom to the part that is being used inside our model. I can zoom out to see where that is. So I'll do that again. I'll do it with the terminal block. So if I want to grab my X1 terminal, I right-click on the symbol, and it will zoom right to where that component is being used inside my assembly. Thing to note here, that we don't have access to our symbols from the mechanical side, so I can't right-click and zoom to 2D. But it does give me the ability to quickly see how this is being used in my mechanical assembly right from our schematic component tree. All right. And that's just going to push that collaboration between our 2D and our 3D designs to quickly navigate from where a component lives on a piece of paper to where it lives inside our model. All right. So next thing we'll talk about is our rights on project data. So we now have the ability to further control who can do what inside our project. And it's not going to be project-based, but we can do it book-based. So look at the read-write privileges of users and try to lock down any edits that are being made by somebody that may only need to view the project. They don't actually have to create symbols or edit symbols or draw wires. So we'll jump into here, and I want to do this from my document tree. And right now, if I right-click, I can see my normal list here, but I don't have anything about access rights. So what I do have to do is use my drop-down and go into interface configuration. And from here, this is where rights management lives. And access to our user rights is only going to be available if this is turned on. So I want to turn on my user rights, and I'll go in at an admin level so I can control these rights. All right, so I'm currently logged in. Now what happens when I right-click my book, I have this access rights, and I can configure or edit. So if I want to configure my access rights, I can start to pick and choose which groups I want access to my book number 1. So I'm going to come back in real quick and manage my user rights. So I'm just going to go ahead and for my library group, I'm going to make a new group saying Lunch and Learn group. Say OK and OK. So I'm going to grant access to my Lunch and Learn group for this book. That's my project managers 2 is where that fell under. So I'll say OK. And now if I right click and say edit authorized groups, this is where I'll see which groups have access. So maybe I don't want my project managers to have access, but I do want my lunch and learn group to have access. So I can say OK there. And if I create a new book, I can now manage those rights on this level as well. So I can edit my authorized group and say, all right, this is my project manager, my test group. Only has access to this group here. All right. All right. Next up, our enhanced formula manager. So we're going to look at what we could do inside of our formula. And you'll notice in my window here, I got a new tab that's been added. So we'll look at all available variables and functions that have been added for the users, and we can now actually test what our formula is going to do before we ever initiate it inside our project. So we don't have to do trial and error by removing all wire labels, rerunning wire labels, realize I had a typo in there, I used the wrong variable, and then try it again. So I'll come into SolidWorks Electrical, and I'll access, so if I wanted to change my wire label on my neutral line here, so where it currently says N1, up top here. If I wanted to change that, before I'd have to go into my wire styles and change it there. Now all I have to do is click on that wire, go into my properties. From my wire style, I can actually drive this equation, and that's going to bring us into our formula manager. So one new feature that we have inside our formula manager is we always had this predefined formulas, but they've been set by the system. So now what I can do is, as I want to create a new predefined formula, so if I want to add Tom to every wire or every neutral wire inside my program, I can actually save this formula out, and it's going to be a user-created formula that I can push across multiple or all my projects. So now this is going to be available to my users to say, all right, this is the style that I want to use for all my neutral lines. It's in the predefined. I don't have to go around and tell everybody what the setup is, or I don't have to share the wire styles with them. I can quickly create them. All right, our recent formulas remain the same, so anything that we've used will be tracked here. For our variables, we've added some new variables for each section. We also had the description that was new for 2015. This tab hasn't changed too much. What has changed is this new functions tab. So what I now have access to is all those functions that were always part of the system, but you almost had to know a guy to figure out what function to use in certain situations. So if I wanted to add a letter, if I wanted to take a part of a property, I wouldn't know that, or I wouldn't know how to do that unless I had this user's guide. So what we've done for 2016 is giving you access to every function that is available as a SQL query, and even gave you a little example of what that means. So a test to say, all right, if I want to use this value, this is what it's going to output. So for my formula here, I'm going to type in that I want to add the left value of my wire, so maybe the left two values. So I want to extract my left, and for this I'll use my variables and then grab my color. Just get rid of that plus sign. And I want to grab the first two letters of the color of my wire. So I can now see that this formula is good to go, and I can hit my test formula. So the calculator is a new function for 2016. So as I click there, it'll show me my variables that I have for my equation, and I can actually type in a test set. So my color is going to be, let's say, brown, and my equipotential, we'll say, is 1255. I can start to see what the result of my wire style is going to be, or what my equipotential formula is going to be. So it just gives us that ability to say, maybe BR isn't enough information. Maybe I need a third letter for this. So I can come back in, tweak my left function, rerun it, and now that I can see that's going to be BRO. So it's going to save a lot of rework time where we were deleting out wires, reassociating, reassigning names for wires just to see if our equation made sense or not. This functionality is going to be a big time saver, I think. Say OK there. It'll give us a warning that we've changed some of our functionality there. So I have a new wire label. I still have to go through, and I can say renumber my wires. We'll get rid of those, and now when I push out my new wire style, we can start to see that this property is actually that it's green. So my wire color is going to come out as green, GRE. Cool. All right. What do we have next? All right, nodal indicator for cabling order. If anyone has used the wire cabling order and tried to figure that out, not always the easiest interface to navigate. So what we've added is the ability to actually create this nodal indicator just to show the flow of the wires inside our system. So, and we can quickly edit this if something is out of place. So a huge visual aid for anyone that's trying to read a schematic, that they don't have to rely on a report to show them the to from. And it's going to avoid errors on the floor because we now know the actual connection, so where our wire is running. I'll show this. So right now you can see for something like this in my schematic, I'm not really sure what's happening. If this is coming all the way across, and then I have a loop here between my motors, if this comes down to my motor, back out, or all the way across. The only way I had the ability to see what was going on is if I right-clicked and showed my wire cabling order. What this would show me is where I'm going to and from for that, for each of those sections. So coming out of my motor, going into 6.2, coming out of my motor 2, going into 12.2. So it's starting to show some of those properties of our wire types. So now what I can do, I guess this would have been a better example up top if I wanted to look at my wire cable. So going from motor to motor and checking here. So now what I can do instead is turn on my nodal indicator. And we'll find that under our project configurations. Under the graphic tab, we now have nodal indicators, which has been added. Go ahead and turn that on. Say OK. And now we can start to see our wire cabling order graphically. So now I have a better understanding of how this wire is coming out, picking up our another wire here, coming down and breaking out. So right now I can tell that this doesn't really make sense. I don't want to wire my motor to my motor. So I click and right-click. I can actually edit my connection path for this, and I can change the appearance, which is also changing my wire cabling order. Oop, if I choose the correct one. So this one is not going to cooperate. So I can go back to my normal. I can hide my nodal indicator. That's not really what I wanted to do, though. Let's see if I can get this one. Picking a bad owl, because all these don't go anywhere. Bad example, Tom. Let's try it down here. So I keep running into another connection path. Should have practiced. Oh man. All right, so that's just changing the way we view it. But we can start to tweak our appearance on the way wires run into one another, especially with that no nodal indication. This is kind of leaving it up to imagination on how this is going to get wired on the floor, other than having that to/from list. So you can turn on a couple different variations of it. All right. Again, that was in order to use that in 2016. We'd have to go to Project Configurations and turn on our graphical nodal indicators. All right. Next, we'll talk about filters inside of our reports. So we've always had the ability to run a report, but we couldn't do much with it, especially in this preview window. So now we can quickly create a filter internal to our report and generate on that. So I want to filter out objects just in maybe a folder or in a book, and create that filter and then push out my report. So our reports are still on our project tab. Go into reports, and right now you can see that all my default options do not have a filter. So if I want to take my bill of materials and say Schneider Electric called and said they're going to have a delay on our delivery, we might need to order from elsewhere. If I want to quickly see which Schneider Electric parts I have in my bill of materials, I can add a filter, and we'll just call it Schneider Electric BLM filter, and we'll sort for that. Now, my second tab here is conditions. So what I can do is start to almost make it's making a query inside of my report tab to say my BOM manufacturer, if that has a value of Schneider Electric, report out at it. And it's giving me this UI that can drive what the actual equation is. I'll go ahead and say OK. It'll generate a new report for me, which is going to be all my Schneider Electric parts, which you can see if I close this down a little. So now I can see everything that's from my bill of materials and filtered out for specific instances. You can always edit the filter even after it's been created. So if I want to rerun this for Legrand, let's say, I should have changed my description, but now I can run this on all my Legrand parts. We can still generate drawings from our new filtered list as well. So my bills of materials grouped by manufacturer with my description. So my sort by Schneider Electric is part of my report tree. All right. All right, another cool one. Project macro or multiple page macro, as well as dynamic paste special. So come into SolidWorks Electrical, and I'll go to my document tree here. So from my document tree, I can see that I have a schematic folder that has my 4 drawings. If I wanted to reuse these, so this is my baseline of a motor system that I use in every project, but I alter it or I have to tweak it a little bit, or if it's an auxiliary circuit to something that I designed, and I want to store that out. Before we would select everything on the page and drag it over to our macro window. So what I'm going to do now is, instead of doing that, if I wanted to grab this page as well as page 103, I'll grab my PLCs too. I can right-click on my folder and say Create Project Macro. And we'll call this our motor control macro. And just as any other macro, we can place it into a class. So if I want it in my motor control, we can add it to a library. And our macro type here is going to be a project, which is new. And I can say this is my 4-page motor macro. All right. Go ahead and hit OK. And what that's going to do is save that out to the database with all my information. So now as I go into Book 2, if I want to insert, call it my baseline, call it call it an auxiliary project, I can come through and find my 4-page motor macro, which is stored on the server now. Go ahead and double-click it, and it's going to launch my Paste Special dialog box. And we're used to seeing this for a macro. What we're not used to seeing is all our options up top. So depending on if I want to create a new mark or if I want to keep the existing mark, so maybe for my locations and functions, I'm working inside the same panel box or on the same, for this it's a piping system, so if I'm working the same spot externally, I can keep those marks the same. But for everything else, I really do want to create a new mark. So my PLC should be updated. My terminal strip should actually be updated. So we can do all this. Now when I hit Next, it's going to go through and give me the options of what I want to do with everything in this macro. So do I want to rename my scheme folder? So maybe I want to call this S2. My description will remain schemes for that one. So I can provide a new mark to this option. As I go to my next one, I'm looking at all my marks, so my 100s to 103. I can update those fields. My locations, which I told them to keep the same. So these guys are going to be locked down. That's why they're yellow, because I said keep the same. Same with functions. So I have a green light here. Do I want to rename the harness that I had inside my project? I'll go ahead and say sure. We'll call it H2. So separate harness than we had before. All my wire marks, or my equipotential marks, how do I want to change those? Do I want to, again, on my locations of components, so my components inside of here, do I want to create an association at this point? Do I want to rename them to a new value? So if I right-click, I can say create a new mark, or I can right-click and say associate. And for S3, let's say I want to associate that to, call it H2. Go ahead and create that association. And now I'm controlling what's happening inside of my project here. We'll finish up on this menu. Hit next a couple more times. It'll show us what's been added as a new component or what has been merged. So what's been kept the same from our old macro. So my functions and locations were updated. That one component, my S2 component, was updated, and I've kept my same wire style or cable style. Go ahead and hit finish, and now I can come down here and see my schemes inside my second book, which I should have planned for this, which I don't have access to because I haven't given it, I haven't actually assigned as the admin group access. If I did want to change that, I could access my rights, edit my authorized groups, go ahead and give myself access to this book. You'll see that that red X, which was there before, has been removed, and now I can go ahead and launch my new scheme. All right. So project macros can work on books, folders, individual sheets, or individual wires. So if we wanted to still grab a grouping from a project and make it a project macro, we can do it that way. And then the Paste Special gives us that control over the aspects of the macro. So if we're keeping the mark, changing the mark, or reassigning or associating a part or component from that macro. So if we can have blocks of information ready for us at a macro, and we can bring it into a project with that smart association, we should be able to save a heck of a lot of time when developing our projects. And again, just increasing that quality because we can reuse circuits that have already been tested, already been proven, and gone through a process control to say this is good to go. All right, next we'll talk about our project snapshot, which I mentioned in the beginning. So the ability to take a placeholder at any point inside of our project. So we're going to create a historical record of our design at a single point, and then we can continue working. So it's pretty much a revision control inside of SolidWorks Electrical. We can also automate when to create this snapshot. So after a certain number of days, do we want to always have that backup created? Also, these get saved onto the database so we can roll back. So as we make a design change and realize, nope, Rev 2 was the right path to go, we can roll back to Rev 2. Let's show this. And this one will end up yelling at me, but that's okay. So I'll show you what happens. If I right-click at my project level, I can take a snapshot. And it's going to yell at me because I have multiple users. So in order to do this, you have to be the only user inside that project, because now we're manipulating data on the database that other people will be changing during the snapshot. So all I have to do is come into my 3D project, which was open. Go ahead and close that project. Save all my documents. So we will launch back into here. Go ahead and save there. Now when I come back, I didn't wait long enough. Save all. Alright, and we're just waiting for this to close down. We're not closing SolidWorks completely, we're just leaving the project that we have open inside of SolidWorks. There we go. So we're outside of there. Come back in, take a snapshot, and it's going to ask me for a name, which is my project name, any description, so what's changed. So this is going to be a manual snapshot. Event detail is okay. So go ahead and hit OK there. And what it's going to do, it's going to create an archive at this point. So it's just like you're normally saving or you're archiving to send to a customer. It's just going to give us the heads up that a snapshot has been created. Now if I wanted to come back into my project, I can look at my snapshot manager and see which snapshots have been created. So I had one yesterday. I've now created an update for my lunch and learn. And this is where I can say every 3 days, let's take a snapshot. So I want to benchmark every 3 days of this project. I can also select an older snapshot and say restore as my new project. And that's going to unarchive our project just like normal. So we'll go through the whole unarchive process. So this is our snapshot manager for this project. And we can look at the properties of each snapshot that was created. So this one can be a very powerful tool, especially if you're doing design iterations for a project. All right, our PDM link has been added to give you the ability to manipulate the BOM information inside of EPDM upon check-in. So this is a user-controlled report, or a user-controlled PI that can take the information that we're exporting out of SolidWorks Electrical and put it into EPDM. So if you want to, any component that isn't currently in EPDM, we can write an API and say, all right, push this information into a data field in EPDM. And all that's coming from is this run after export is looking for an executable file type. And that lives under our tools, link to PDM configuration. And under the bill of materials, you'll see this ... That's going to be looking for a file type, an executable file type, to push that information. If any of you know me, I'm not the API guy, so I don't have a good example for that. All right, we'll go back into our 3D space here. And for those that have gone through training and have done the origin destination configuration, you know that it's a lot of button clicks to select your cable, select your origin, select your destination, and repeat that process over and over again. So now what we can do, we can set up our 3D components based on the location that they've been placed in, associate them all up front, then go to our other location, associate our destinations based on that. So I will launch my SolidWorks again, or my electrical project again. Tools, SolidWorks Electrical Project Manager. Grab my What's New project. All right, I'll grab my top level here. Let that boot up. So what I'm going to do is I have a couple cable glands that I want to become my origin locations, and my motors and valves in this example will become my destination locations. So we'll let this boot up, and we can start to look at our origin destination of cables based on location. Almost there. Nope. All right. All we're doing here is verifying our electrical components from our project inside of SolidWorks. So from my electrical 3D tab, I now have a drop-down for set origin destination of cables, and I can select by location. So instead of selecting which cable type I want to use, now what I'm selecting is the location of these origin components. So I will say these are coming out of my chassis. And what it will show me are all the cables that I had inside of SolidWorks Electrical 2D, and what their origin was set up as for the chassis. So now as I zoom in, I can see my cable glands. I can quickly select my cable numbers. So we'll grab cable W2, create my association, cable W3, create my association. So a lot quicker if anybody remembers this process from the training exercises. So I can quickly come through and select all my entities without having to navigate through a bunch of menus. Same on the other end. So if I do want to save my changes here, I can grab my pump location, and now it's going to ask me for my destination of components. You know, I'll put stuff invisible if I've already selected it. So this is my pump power. It goes to my other pump. PLC outputs, we're going down to these valves. So a real quick process in order to define where our cables are going to go to and from. Go ahead and accept that. Cool. All right, our final update for 2016 here is our the ability to import a PCB into a schematic as well as 3D. So in 2015, we saw the addition of the connector tool. So from my schematic tab, I could insert a connector. This year we got insert printed circuit board. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually create a printed circuit board part. So from my library and my manufacturer parts manager, I want to create a new printed circuit board. So I'll add a manufacturer part. We'll call this PCB XYZ. And CAD dimensions can be the manufacturer. There we go. I'm not worried about the library or anything here, but what I am concerned with is my printed circuit board file. And what we're using here is SolidWorks to generate our PCB. So if we have a SolidWorks file type, so an IDF or a PADS file type that we can use, so I'll just grab an IDF3 here and grab an example. We can bring that file into our database. So I want to copy that file for this component. Go ahead and hit OK. So my PCB XYZ has been created. And now I can go back to my schematic tab and insert this PCB. So I want to create a new printed circuit board. I'll grab the one that I just created, select them, say OK. And I want to generate this as for this one we'll say a line diagram symbol. So what this means is I can wire up a cable to and from it. So go ahead and grab just our generic I guess I don't have one here. We'll just grab a generic block here, and that's going to act as our PCB. If I wanted to do this as a schematic symbol, which I'll do this again, so I'll create a new one, say OK, and OK. So I'll bring them in as a schematic symbol. It'll actually just give me a generic schematic symbol that's going to act like a black box. So as I draw this over wires, it'll automatically create those connection points for me. And depending on the manufacturer part that I've chosen for this, I can actually define my terminals for this component, so my inputs and outputs of this PCB. So I wanted to add a whole bunch of black box components with a couple terminals and start to define them. Say A, B, 1, 2, X, Y. So we'll get a couple examples out there. Update my catalog, and we can start to see that my symbol is going to reflect what is created as this manufacturer part. All right. We can also do, now that I have E2 created inside of electrical, I can use that information inside of SolidWorks. So as I look at my panel box inside my chassis, look for E2. So I have E2 here that has a 3D representation with it. What I can do is use that IDF file and actually build the model. So take the information from my PCB software and build that model, which of course this one's a bit larger. And what it uses is SolidWorks Lite, and it's going to import all the information from that IDF, put it into SolidWorks, and actually generate the 3D model that's required for my project here. So you can see that it's going through every component that's on this PCB, and it will power through and actually generate our 3D model for us. I have a picture of the 3D model here. While that's running in the background, I'll jump back over to it once this is gone. So schematics are now linked to a PCB definition, which we have the ability to create that link inside our manufacturer parts information. We can also define the to from of the board using our terminal information in the manufacturer part. Finally, the benefit of having a 3D PCB is that we can now test for collision, make sure our board's going to fit inside our design before we go ahead and send it to the floor and say, yeah, we don't have room for this PCB, or we can't close our door, close the top of this component. See how we're doing here. Figures I had another example that was only 100 components, we would have been done by now. But while that's still running, I'll wrap up here. We did want to keep this to under an hour. So I do thank you for tuning in and learning what's new. And again, this will, I've recorded this session, so we'll post it out to the website. So in case you ever miss anything, you can go to info@CAD Dimensions and click on our Connect link. Always check out our blog. We have new information going out multiple times a week. And you can always follow us on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, as well as YouTube, where this video will be located. A couple upcoming events. We have our Albany rollout tomorrow at the Glenn Sanders Mansion. So any of our Albany users that are interested in learning what's new for SolidWorks, feel free to sign up and attend for that tomorrow. And then our Jamestown rollout is next week, as well as our Erie rollout. Next month, Kevin will be doing another Lunch and Learn on paperless drawings and talking about MBD and the ability to create a drawing based on our model without ever having to print. This time I'll open up the questions. Feel free to use your GoToWebinar side panel there and type in any questions you might have. You can always email me at tdelora@caddimensions.com as well. See how close we are. Just about 50 more components. yeah, while this is going, feel free to ask any questions. Let me know what you like about 2016. All right, a couple more components here to get our 3D model. And once this 3D model is generated, it'll stay linked to that manufacturer part. So if a change does happen on the PCB, we can rerun this and it will update. But it does store the information once it's created as its 3D part. Cool. So we can see our preview of our SolidWorks PCB. So it's generated the model for us, placed it here. So now all I have to do is right-click and insert, and we'll go ahead and grab that model that's stored now, and I can place them. So we can start to see how our components and how our PCB is going to look. All right, we do have a question coming in. Any good books that in print that teach SolidWorks electrical? So yeah, Everett, we have trading books from training that'll walk you through a typical project for both 2D and 3D. We got a couple blogs out there that aren't books, but give you some more information on what the tool can do. And depending on what you're trying to do with the software, feel free to reach out and ask, and we can definitely set something up and try to help you better understand what this tool can do. All right. Is it possible to create routing for automobile harnesses? Yep. So we can create a harness inside the schematic tool. So as we have our wires documented or our cables documented, the ability to create a harness requires just selecting the items and wires that you want. So if I want to grab everything between my fuse and my terminals, I can highlight those, right-click, and say Add or Remove to Harness. And what that'll do is create a harness for us. So if I want to create a new harness, H3, that's fine. Go ahead and assign it to that harness. So now when I am ready to route inside of my 3D space, I have that harness. Let's close out of here. I have that harness available for me. So I want to select a harness and grab H3. That's going to have the wires, which are part of it, as well as the components, which are part of that harness. All right. There is a student version of SolidWorks Electrical. Wire numbering work better. Jeff had a question about wiring number that I haven't tested yet. So I will run that after this webinar, Jeff, and I'll let you know if that numbering scheme has been corrected. I believe the student version, Ted, for SolidWorks Electrical is 2015-2016, but I can verify that for you as well. It'll usually coincide with whatever the SolidWorks release is, which I thought, no, I believe it is 15-16. All right. Well, I do appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you get a chance to check out 2016. If you have any questions, again, feel free to email me, and we can always do a go-to meeting to see some of the functionality. So, hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Take care.
Don't forget to check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and our blog for more great content by clicking on the links in the description below.